All right, good evening, Pittsburgh Unified School District parents and families. Thank you so much for joining us this evening on our parent webinar on planning for the expenses of college. And as the parent of 3 current students in college, I can say I wish I had the information that you're about to receive this evening when my kids were in elementary school. So please take advantage of this wonderful parent workshop that we have for you. It's never too early to start planning for your child's future, even if your child is in kindergarten or preschool. So welcome this evening to our presentation on funding your child's college education. Joining me this evening is Mr. Gary Varan, and also providing our translation this evening is Ms. Maria Gomez. During the presentation, if you have any questions, if you can please post them in the Q&A. You're also welcome to post your comments in the chat. At the end of the webinar, we'll all stop the recording. And then if you want to use the raise hand feature at that time, we'll be able to unmute you at that point so you can pose your questions as well. Bienvenidos padres y familias del Distrito Escolar de Pittsburgh. Gracias por acompañarnos esta tarde. Si usted necesita la presentación en español, por favor, seleccione la imagen que se mira como un globo y dice interpretación. Y luego escoja el idioma de español para poder escuchar la presentación en español. Así que muchísimas gracias. All right, I see we have almost 80 participants and hopefully climbing. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. And I welcome Mr. Gary Varan for this evening's presentation. Welcome, Gary.
Oh, thank you, Leticia. Thank you for that warm welcome. At any time, if I go off the rails or if there's any technical difficulties, if you can please let me know, that would be great because I can see you on my screen, but I don't get to see the other 80 plus families that are online tonight. So thank you for joining us tonight. Obviously, this is a very important topic to all of you. And if not, you wouldn't be giving up an hour of your evening on a Thursday when you could be having dinner or resting. So clearly, it's an important topic to you as it is for us. So for the next 50 minutes or so, I'll be talking a little bit about funding your child's college education. Irregardless of where you are on your journey with preparing to send your kids off to college, there are steps that can always be taken along that path. And we'll be touching base on a variety of different topics this evening. We'll be opening it up for some questions in the chat throughout the webinar. And of course, we could be available for a few minutes after the webinar and then thereafter to follow up on any questions. So normally when I teach this class, it's interactive. We can talk, we can share ideas, we share experiences, but because of the platform and the limited time that we have, it will be more one directional, but I do encourage everyone to put their questions in the chat, and my friend Leticia will help me monitor those questions so we can ensure we address them as best as possible. So let's go ahead and begin. A little bit about my background. My name is Gary Varan or Veran. My parents were immigrated from Peru about 35, 40 years ago. I was born here in the States. I earned my MBA from Ohio University. I graduated from UC Davis quite a while ago with a BA in economics. And I have over 20 years of experience in corporate financial planning as well as personal financial planning. And the reason I do this is I really do care about helping families plan for college for their children. I was raised with no other vision other than you will go to college. And so it was never an option for me. And so I've taken that value and I've taken it to heart. I am very blessed. I have 4 children. They're 1 20-year-old, 3 teenagers, and all of them are doing extremely well in school and they're on their way to go to college, with my oldest graduating next year. And to me, it has always been an important value to encourage our children to study, because education opens many doors, all doors in some cases, for opportunities to improve your place in this world, to improve the quality of life of our children, and to really lead to new opportunities that will help them make it a better world and also position the world to be better for their own children, which would be your future grandchildren. So it's a win-win for everyone. And so several years ago, I started working with families to really create educational plans, to really start thinking about how do I start saving for the future? How do I plan for college and university when I also have to take care of myself one day when I'm in my 60s, 70s, and 80s? So what this webinar is going to do for you is we're going to talk about the importance of financial planning for college savings, whether you do it on your own or if you do it with a professional like me and our firm. There are steps that you can take to prepare for college expenses without really decimating your own future. And then we're also going to talk about different strategies, some of the terms that you may have heard. Some of you might be parents of juniors and seniors. Some of you may be parents of first graders and second graders. But either way, the time is short. If any of you have children that are already graduating, you are looking back at where did these past 18 years go? It happens very quickly. And people put planning off and often regret it when they don't start sooner. We're going to answer some of the questions, and you'll answer some of your own personal questions if you're ready for college, if you're ready financially to take on that expense. And then you will determine for yourself if afterwards or at some time in the future, you'd like to have a one-on-one conversation so that you and I can actually talk about your own personal situation and see what questions you have that can be addressed to help you improve your own strategy for college. Excuse me. So we're going to start with some real facts. We always hear in the news that the college costs are going up, and they truly are. In fact, I try to think about when I went to the university 30 years ago, we did not pay tuition fees in public university. We paid registration fees, which were essentially less than 5% of what it costs now. But effectively, in just past years, if you take a look at this graphic, the cost of private universities has risen on average 25% in the past 10 years. And if you look forward to the next 10 years, you can expect those costs to continue to go up. And then when you look at public schools, they've also gone up on average about 30%. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about in this seminar about private schools versus public schools. And I'm talking specifically, the colleges and universities, but also we'll touch base on junior colleges because there's been a lot of new thinking around taking full advantage of junior colleges, especially coming out of 2020 and a pandemic year. But I want you to take a look at this schedule or this graphic for a second. Now, a lot of people assume correctly that public colleges are not as expensive as private colleges, and that is correct when you look at the price tag, at the raw price tag. And if you go to public school in state, which is in California, and that specifically is the community college district system, the California State University system, or the UC, University of California system, they are unfortunately much higher than $21,000 in California. But statistically, it is less expensive for your children to go to college in California than it is if they go to a public school in another state, because other states will reserve the right to charge out-of-state tuition. Now, private colleges, on the other hand, they have a charge for tuition. They don't really discriminate whether you're from California, Arizona, or New York, but on average, they're much more expensive than public schools. And in this graphic, you see that it averages about $48,000 a year. Now, that is the price tag of going to school, but then we're going to talk a little bit about real costs of going to school, okay? Now, you ask yourself, how do I start planning? How do I start planning if my children are 5 and 6 years old? Do I start saving away $100 a month? Do I start saving away $500 a month? If my kids are already in junior high and I'm only 4 to 5 years, what can I do to start saving? Well, the bottom line is, if college and university education is important to you and your family, any saving is better than no saving, no matter where you are in your financial journey. Any saving is better than no saving. And you really have to take a look at your means. And if it's a priority for you to send your kids to college, then you start saving. And then there's different strategies for saving where you can maintain flexibility, where you might choose certain products. You might choose certain savings accounts, but the fact of the matter is some savings, no matter what you choose, is better than no savings because the cost will continue to rise. And so a strategy to get to that point where you'll be able to fund a good portion of your child's education is absolutely critical. Okay. Camera's on. Next slide. Now, there's a variety of different ways to get started for saving. Okay. Now, I won't go into all the details because time doesn't permit for all of these to happen. But you can do things as accounts that maybe a family member, a grandparent, or a parent, you can open up a custodial account, which is like it could be a savings account, an insurance account, but again, you're saving money for the future. Another thing you might have heard of a lot in the news is Coverdell education savings accounts or 529 plans. Now, these are plans that were designed by California state government, as well as every other state government, which really was started when the IRS changed the rules where you could start saving in tax-deferred accounts for the future of your kids. These accounts are very specific to college savings only and can only be used for college expenses. But over the last several years, there's been a lot of changes in the rules. So 529 plans, trust accounts, just gifts, outright gifts from family members or money that you maybe collect every year at birthday parties or the quinceañera or whatever it might be. All of those funds get accumulated and you start saving it. But whatever strategy you pick, you have to be aware of, if I save now, how do I access those funds? And so it's always really important to know what kind of flexibility you have when it's time to access that money to pay for school. And then, of course, just putting money in the mattress. I mean, if that's the way you are most comfortable with saving, again, that's better than no savings at all. But in addition to that, there are other vehicles that you can use that you would use with a banker, or you would work with a financial services professional like me and our firm, or any firm, or that would actually provide you that kind of guidance so you can start savings. Now, there's pros and cons to the different methods for saving, okay? So for example, your personal savings and investment accounts. Now, whether you have a small brokerage account and you're investing with, within your 501k or whatever you might be doing, or it's just in the bank, there's benefits, right? If you keep the money in the bank or in a safe at home, it's flexible, you have control, there's no limits to how much you have to save or how much you, whether there's a requirement that there's a minimum, right? But when you use money that you've been saving, that's all impacted by personal income taxes. Whether you use the money now or if you're earning interest on it, you'll pay taxes on it. It also impacts your eligibility for financial aid. And we will talk about financial aid in a few minutes. Direct payment of tuition to school is another option. So if you are now at the point where your children are going to college, whether it's the community college or they're off to the UC system, paying for college, one of the most important things you need to know is when you start paying for college, it is not considered a gift. It is not tax deductible. A lot of people think that once I get to college, I'll be able to write it off on my taxes. It's the complete opposite. It is just a straight expense. The benefit, though, is that there is no limit to that amount. So if you've been saving your money or you've been, saving all the gifts that your children have received over the years, you can use that. But how much you have saved will impact your consideration for financial aid. And again, we'll go into financial aid in a few moments. The truth of the matter is that savings and investing is just important, just as a strategy. Now, I've worked with many families at different levels of ages and economic situations, and the one common thing is you have to be ideally committed to the importance of education for your children and their future. Because if you're dedicated to that commitment, then it will resonate with your children. Your children will be good students. Your kids will try their best to try to learn and keep their grades up and really build those skill sets that will take them to junior high. And then in junior high, they'll care about pushing themselves a little bit more and taking the challenging courses and preparing for high school. And then in high school, they'll push themselves a little bit more to really prepare themselves for college. But that message starts with the parents at home. It starts with the family support that the students have. And if that message starts, then all of these are just strategies. How much you save in this account, how much you save in a 529 plan, how much you save in a UTMA account. That all becomes a strategy based on your commitment to sending your kids off to college. A couple other tools that are used for savings is there's trust accounts where, for example, all of us, if you are a parent, you should be considering wills, a living trust, which are all tools to ensure that whatever you are doing, all the hard work that you are doing is safeguarded so that it can be passed on to the next generation in case something happens. Well, if you have grandparents who have a trust and they want to leave something for their grandchildren, part of it could be directed for their college expenses. So that is something to consider. And I'm a big believer that all of us should be planning for the future because there's few things that are inevitable in this world. And one of them is that one day we will have to leave this world and go back home or go back to our maker, however you believe. The other thing is taxes. Taxes don't go away. So how to plan for the future and be as efficient with taxes is also an important strategy when it comes to planning for college. Another account strategy is using Coverdell education accounts. Again, I mentioned the 529 plans. There are so many different 529 plans that it can become a little overwhelming. So if this is a strategy that you so choose, it's really important to consider all of the different rules that have to do with each plan. And most of you, if you're employed and your employer offers a 401k plan, there might be an option within your 401k plan to diversify so that you can grow your savings. They may offer 529 options, but you're not limited to your employer or to just your bank. You can actually shop around for different strategies that will fit your budget and fit your need. Okay. But what's really important is considering an overall strategy. Again, determine if going to college is an important topic at home for you and your family, and really nurture that message, really encourage that message. Go visit colleges, get excited about that possibility. Even if you think to yourself, I can never afford Stanford, I could never afford UC Davis. There's ways to make it happen. And I'll talk a little bit about those ideas. I will pause there for just a moment, just to see if there's any questions in the chat that I might be able to answer. Okay.
I don't see any questions at the moment, Gary.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. So let's talk about financial aid. All financial aid for college, and this is the season. Right now, if you have a junior, he or she is being bombarded with all kinds of information about taking the PSAT and taking the SAT, which actually, I take that back. The rules have changed for SAT and for PSAT. All colleges in California aren't even going to accept it anymore. But besides that point, the juniors, they start feeling the pressure if they are going to go to college, start applying. If you're a senior and applying to college next year, then you must fill out a form, which is called the FAFSA or FAFSA, which stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. Now, let me say that again. It's a free application for federal student aid. Doesn't mean you get free money automatically. It's just a free application. But this application is very important because in the state of California, all the public schools require that every family fill out this application. It takes into consideration personal questions about who you are, who your student is, and your financial situation based on your income. It opens up the doors for you to apply automatically for any qualifying financial aid that may be available, and which is available at the community college level, the California state level, and the University of California level. It's also an application required by most schools that are out of state, as public and private. Now, how does it work? The FAFSA is an application that you may have heard of it. It takes a couple hours to fill out. You do have to provide income information. You have to apply every year. And it does require identifying documents and identifying information about you and your family. However, it is just an application. So when you hear, if you hear families talking about, oh, we have to do the FAFSA, we're not going to qualify for financial aid, we don't know what's going to happen. This is just a gate that all of you have to walk through on this journey to college. Okay, because the information that's submitted in that document helps determine what your expected family contribution is. And folks, that is just a formula. Now, I hope one of the things that you all take away after we're done tonight is that you have hope. If you hadn't had hope before, that you could still send and pay and send your children to the college. Not so much of their choice, because sometimes you don't get your first choice, but you get an opportunity to consider sending them to college. Because I guarantee you this, if you are open to your child studying anywhere in this great nation, and they're a good student, there's some college out there that will want your student, and they may actually offer you additional financial aid. But the FAFSA is the first gate. You've got through that gate, and it will tell you what your estimated expected family contribution is. And that can be a little scary, because you may get an answer back that says you can afford to pay the whole thing. You can afford to pay $40,000 a year. And you're saying, no way, I can't do that. I'm not going to do that. I have to come up with a different strategy. Even if you have been saving for 10 years for college. But that's okay. You still have to fill out this form, and then we go to the next step. Okay. So what FAFSA does is it actually puts you on the government radar to be considered for grants if you qualify based on your financial income levels, free grants, which is free money for college. You may qualify for subsidized loans that are basically interest deferred while your student is in school, and when the interest does kick in, it's subsidized by the U.S. government. And then also qualifies you for direct unsubsidized loans, which are basically more loans for school, but at a higher interest rate. Now, that same information that you submit in the FAFSA is also used by colleges when you apply to private schools. So for instance, we're here in the beautiful Bay Area, so I'm sure many of you have heard of St. Mary's College in Moraga. There is Santa Clara University down in Santa Clara, University of San Francisco, USF, all private, in this case, Catholic universities. All those three examples of schools will use the FAFSA information and everything else you fill out in the application for school. And not only will they consider you for any of these funding opportunities, but they will also consider families for merit scholarships, which is free money for your students. They'll consider you for need-based scholarships if there are any available. But private schools will work with you to try to close the gap on how much you have to contribute to pay for your child's education. And that's a really important message, because a lot of people, a lot of families don't even think about applying or having their, brilliant student that's been working so hard to get straight A's. They don't even let them apply to a private school because they think that you'll never be able to afford it. But you don't know until you try. You really don't know. The FAFSA will also consider you for, like I mentioned, loans. The Pell Grant, which is also another grant that doesn't have to be paid back. It also considers you for work study programs. You may have heard about work study programs, which essentially it's guaranteeing your student that they'll have a job on campus, paying at the minimum, if not a little bit better rate. So it's a little bit harder. They have to work for it, but it's offered because it's designed to encourage students to be on campus. It's very sensitive to their schedules and does pay a little bit more. So FAFSA just opens the gate to all of these funding opportunities that could potentially be free money if you qualify. There is a question in the chat. Let me take a moment to take a look at it. Okay, good question. Good question. I was going to bring it up later, but there's a question that is asking, is it true that our kids can do junior college, like at DVC here in Pleasant Hill, or Los Medanos College in Pittsburgh, for the first 2 years free of cost? Would this not reduce college cost and transfer? Absolutely, it would. So using the junior college, or the community college strategy is an absolute viable strategy, because here's the thing. No employer cares where you started college. They care that you finished college. So your student, as long as they're self-disciplined, committed, and follow the guidance provided at the community college, they can get into a program where they can go to school, I would say relatively free. It could potentially be 100% free, but you still have books, you still have cost of living, you might have some fees. There is financial aid for all of those expenses as well, so you'd have to apply. But at the end of the day, it's the community college system right now is basically free for California residents. And then from there, if you go to certain programs like at DVC or Los Medanos, or if you are in Contra Costa College, you can actually transfer to the state system or to the UC system. And there's varying degrees of guarantees that your student will be accepted, but you have to make sure you meet all the criteria. But it is available, and it is a great strategy. In my opinion, this is just my own opinion as a father, as long as my children are disciplined enough to go to the community college and take school very seriously and take advantage of those resources, it is a great strategy to help reduce the costs of college. Okay. In fact, that's what we were talking about here in this next slide. Different options for decreasing costs is going to a degree, going to community college, and then using those credits that you earned at the community college, and then you transfer to a four-year university. There's special programs out there that are called Degree in 3, which is essentially you can apply to a college if they have this program, and you get onto the student gets onto a track where they actually finish school in 3 years. Now, I can share this with you because of COVID. A lot of students are graduating now in less than 4 years because they just kept studying all year round. So in the state school and UC system, you pay one amount and you take as many classes as you can take up to a certain limit. And that's how students are able to finish sooner, because they basically stack their classes. So that is a viable way to save money, is have your child finish college in 3 years or less. There's scholarships that can be not economic need based. It could be purely based on your academic performance. It could be based on who you are and where you've come from. It could be a community scholarship, maybe from the Lions Club that is wanting to share, a scholarship with a student from their community that's going off to college. This becomes, I'm not exaggerating this at all, it is a tremendous amount of work to seek out scholarships if you want to get a lot of funding for school. because there's so many opportunities out there, but you have to take a look at that. Another thing that people do, and I'm hearing more and more about this, is some kids will actually go to another state. Let's say they want to go to University of Texas, or they want to go to school in Florida, University of Tampa, but they can't afford it necessarily, or it's just too expensive or they're on their own. Well, what some kids do is that they'll go to the local community college in that state, same strategy, but you go to that other state, go to junior college there for 2 years, gain your residency, and then you can go to that school. And in some states, when you're a resident, it's free. Some states have free 4-year university for their students. So that's another option. And then, of course, there's always the option of staying home as much as you can before you go off to school. So again, you can be extremely creative in ways that your students go to college, and how you're going to manage the expenses, especially if you haven't had the opportunity to save up $80, $90, $100,000. But you have to have an open mind. You have to be open to doing whatever it takes to help your child get to college. Okay, I'll go to my next slide. I'm going to try to pick up the pace here a little bit. I'm mindful of the time. When you're looking at going back to savings for a moment, when you're looking for savings, you really do want to take a look at interest rates, investment rates, or returns, I should say, and tax benefits. And these are all things that you can do on your own, or you can talk to your CPA, or you can talk to a college planning professional, whatever your level of comfort is. But the fact of the matter is that, again, saving should start as soon as possible for their future. I'm going to skip through some of these slides because they have to do with life insurance, and I don't really want to dive into how life insurance is used at this time. But again, there are different tools for saving for the future. Life insurance is one of them. And you might ask yourself how? Well, life insurance is actually a savings strategy that helps you save for the future. And that's why many people use it for college planning, but also some of the other products we talked about, 529 plans, savings accounts, CD accounts, things like that. Okay. Let's talk about okay. So what I want to talk about now is, we'll stop here with this nice graphic of all these college graduates. When you apply to college, and it's that time of the year where you're deciding if my child is going to go to a public school or a private school, I think that you should be open to applying to both, and I'll share why. I don't have this graphic with me. I regret that I can't show it for you, but there's a reason why private schools could potentially cost you less than a public school. And the reason is schools like USC, USF in San Francisco, St. Mary's College, Santa Clara University, or even some of the big names like Notre Dame in Indiana, University of San Diego, a beautiful, beautiful Jesuit university on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The tuition there is $60, $70, maybe even $80,000 a year. Now, please don't choke. In contrast, going to the UC, specifically UC San Diego, my daughter's a senior at UC San Diego. We pay for her to go to school there, and her cost of education is $33,000 a year. USD, which is a private college right up on the cliff, is $67,000 a year. However, University of San Diego has a very strong alumni base. People are very proud of their universities where they graduate from, so therefore they donate back to their schools. Well, when you're looking at schools like University of San Diego or University of Southern California, schools that have large endowment funds, I know it's going to make sense to everyone, and I'm sorry if you already know this, but schools that have very large endowment funds, they give out a tremendous amount of financial scholarships. So much so that if you have a graduating senior who's a good student, great grades, has just been overall a contributing member of her high school community, she has done her best to really, push forward her dream of going to college and wanting to be a lawyer or a doctor, or a teacher, whatever it might be. Schools want kids like that. And private schools have the endowment funds to provide scholarships. So imagine you apply to University of San Diego and you receive 50% financial scholarships. So now your cost of going to a private school is $35,000, which is almost the same as going to a public school. And this is free money. This isn't financial aid based. So if you're a family where, let's say, both of you are working really hard, or you're working really hard, but your household income is $125,000 a year between two of you or just one person, it may be difficult to qualify for financial aid at the state schools. I know I certainly have clients who did not qualify, but they were able to send their child to University of Oregon or to University of USC or to University of Texas, the private schools, because scholarships were available to them. And it ended up costing them less than going to a UC. So again, and this is just, you can do your own research. There's tools out there like maybe I'll send out, maybe with Leticia's help, I'll send out some information to some websites, but there's boards out there like the Big Board that will tell you the cost of going to schools, colleges, and it'll tell you the size of the endowment funds of private schools. But again, private schools should be on your radar, because even if you think that you cannot or do not want to spend the money at a private school, if you have a student that's been working hard his whole life and has the grades and has the resume, the academic resume to be considered, he could very well receive funding, because there are colleges all over this country that want bright young students from California, from the Bay Area. They want you there. I was very blessed. I'll share a personal story with you. My daughter is the oldest of four. When she was applying to colleges, she applied to universities all over this country. And she was accepted at Seton Hall in New Jersey. And she received, Seton Hall cost at that time $65,000 a year. She received a financial aid package, a scholarship package, not financial aid, a scholarship package that was equal to $55,000 a year. As a family, we only had to come up with $10,000 per year, guaranteed to graduate in 4 years. Okay, in private schools, they will work to have you graduate in 4 years. And it would have cost us $10,000 for her to go to school in New Jersey. Now, truth be told, she did not go to New Jersey. She stayed in California, but that was a personal choice because she wanted to be closer to home. She did not feel she was ready to go to the other side of the country. And that's a fair reason to stay closer. But I was open to it. As a family, we had agreed, if this is your choice, if this is what is the right thing to do and the most financially feasible thing to do, then we will support you in going to school 3,000 miles away. That's the question all of you have to ask yourselves. Are you willing to let your children go away to school so that they can not only benefit from the education, but maybe it is the right financial strategy at that moment in time for your family, so that you take advantage of what the school may offer? Those are hard choices, especially if you haven't saved up enough during your lifetime. Now, going back to saving for college, again, there's a variety of different strategies, but the most important strategy is coming up with a personal plan that is disciplined, where you save consistently, period over period, which is either every month, every week, every 6 months, whatever works for you. But putting things on automatic savings, whether the money's going into a savings account, a 529 plan, or an investment account, if you do things automatically, you will be extremely pleased as the years go by as to how quickly you have amassed a savings plan for your college education costs. And the power of time is important. So if you have young children, it's important to start now. But if you have children that are in junior high, you still have time, because again, it goes back to the calculation that says how much you can contribute. You have to close the gap as much as possible. And here's the beautiful news, is that if you are able to start saving young and you get all the way to the college years and your student receives a full ride to Wyoming State because they play soccer, or they they're horseback rider, or they're just a brilliant up and coming scientist, that money you've saved is now available to you for other children or for your own future. So it's a win-win either way. If you can start planning towards your future and saving now, don't think in terms anymore of 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time, which I know is very difficult to do. Some of us, many of us, including myself at times, we live paycheck to paycheck. But that's why that discipline is important, because you have to have the long view. You have to keep in mind what your goal is, if your goal is to send your children to college. Now, what about military service? Well, I can't speak in detail about what's available in the programs, but I know myself, when I talk to clients and I talk to others about this, we always encourage people to save. But so what if they say, hey, Gary, my son, he's going to go into the Marines. I saved all these years to go into the Marine, and now he's going to go into the Marines. And I'm like, well, first of all, that's fantastic. Support your child, and they will come out a stronger person. And of course, they'll be able to take advantage of any, offerings or any benefits that the military offers. But now you saved all of this for his future. Well, he may come out and still move on to graduate school. But if you have a flexible strategy, you'll be able to take that fund and maybe use it for another child, or be able to, to roll it over into something else that is for your own future, or maybe it becomes a gift to your child for their first home. But again, the power of saving is important. So it doesn't matter if it's possible your child might, not go to school. Maybe they go to trade school. Well, you can save money for trade school. Trade school is not inexpensive at all. It's you can go to junior college and get started, get your AA, which of course, someone asked, it's very, low cost. But the world changing, where before you would think that having a college degree would automatically get you a job, and people would think that, and it was just not necessarily for everyone. But more and more, most businesses and industries are moving to computer-based work, are moving to technology in whatever role you may be. I mean, let's say that your daughter has dreams of always wanting to be and having her own auto mechanic shop. That's completely a great idea. She was obviously influenced by someone in her life to want to do that. But I'll tell you right now, I could work on my car when I was 16. I can't do anything on my car now because everything is computer-based. Things are special ordered parts. You have to know, sometimes in a case, advanced calibration. I mean, it's more technical than it's ever been. So education, whether it's to trade school, junior college, four-year university, or all the way to your PhD, is always going to open up doors for success. I truly believe that. And I do believe my colleague, Leticia, believes that as well. And that's a message that's very, very important. I'm just going to check and see how we're doing for time. 10 minutes, 10 minutes. Let me, if I take a moment, one more minute, I'm just going to go through see if there's any topic that I didn't touch that I wanted to, because this is a presentation I normally have for 2 hours, so I'm going a little bit quicker because I want to open it up for any questions or hand raises. Okay, so we're not going to talk about life insurance. So I'm going to leave this up for a second. It does not have my contact information, but I just want to reiterate just a couple of things. Whether you bank, Wells Fargo, whether you have an account with Charles Schwab, whether you have a 529 with the state of California, if you're participating in CalKids, which is a new program that is gaining traction in California, where the state is actually helping you, please consider a strategy at whatever age your children are to start planning for their future. And second of all, the level of support that they get at home. If your children are good students and they're going into their high school years with a strong foundation, because high school is not easy, academically, emotionally, and socially, but they get through that, and they will get through it. They will be positioned to succeed in college, and they have to believe that as well. And you encourage that with whatever funding that you've put in place over the years, and you're open to the possibility of applying to a variety of different schools, or setting the expectations for your children. Go to junior college for 2 years, and then you'll be able to transfer. That's a fantastic strategy. Not one that I was really embracing myself many years ago, but I've come to realize that the cost of college has gone up so much that you have to consider all options. All options are on the table for you. Okay. And it's really important. Now, Leticia, I'm going to pause there for a moment since I only have about 9 more minutes. Are there any questions in the chat that I can address for everyone that you can see?
Let me check the chat.
Because I have several messages here, so I'll go read them as well. Oh, this is a good question. What type of first generation financial help is there? When you apply to colleges, especially within the state system, you are actually asked, are you a first-time college student? And you will get consideration for incremental funding or scholarships or grants. And in the private world, we've experienced that in our family, as well as some of my clients, where you can apply as a first-time college attendee, and especially if you're a good student, chances are you will be considered for additional financial scholarship, not just financial aid, but scholarship. That was a good question.
Gary, there's a question in the Q&A. Are you taxed if withdrawing from traditional savings?
No, because you've already paid taxes on it. So that's so if traditional savings means you got your paycheck, you paid your payroll taxes, and then you put whatever was left over that you wanted into a savings account. Well, you've already paid taxes on it. So when you withdraw that money to go pay for college, no, there's no tax. You get taxed on whatever interest you earned on the money you save, which you all know is less than almost 0% in a bank, but there's no additional taxes. That's a good question. Here's a question in the chat in Spanish, and Leticia, if there's another one in the Q&A, please read it out. Dice, ¿cuándo se debe aplicar al colegio comunitario si mi hijo está en el grade 11? If you're in 12th grade, you can start applying to community college. Community college is really not about applying. It's about enrolling, that you will be accepted into community college. However, if you start earlier, then let's say your son wants to study mathematics. The earlier you enroll, once the enrollment period opens, when you're a senior, the better chances you have of getting the classes he needs. Because that's the other thing that always is tough with schools now is you have to start school, you have to start thinking about school early to try to, if you want to finish fast, and you have to plan ahead. But he can start applying in as a 12th grader, unless he wants to take college classes earlier, which then I would advise he talks to his advisor to see if he is in if he could take college classes before he graduates. But that's something that you work out with your school. Good question.
Gary, there's a question in Spanish that says, if their student has savings accounts, will that impact when they apply for financial aid?
Yes. When you fill out the FAFSA, they take into consideration your income, your savings, your children's savings accounts as well. Now, the fact is that college is so darn expensive that unless, I shouldn't say this, but let's say that you have $30,000 saved up in a child's savings account, and let's say you also have 50,000. The FAFSA will take a look at the full 80,000. Now, if the college is very, very expensive that you're applying to, like Pepperdine, which is $90,000 a year, then you might still qualify for a little bit more because it's so expensive to go to school there. But in the state school, it could be a little harmful. It could be. So yes, it does consider children's assets. That's a very good question.
Gary, there's also another question. What are the chances that you would be denied for financial aid if you have a 529 plan?
Well, again, the value of the 529 plan goes into your calculation for financial aid through the FAFSA. So it's not so much you would be denied just because you have a 529 plan. It depends on how much you have in it at that time. You can have a 529 plan and have $100 in it. That's not enough to pay for college. So you're not going to be denied financial aid because you have the plan. But let's say you had $100,000 in there. You may not get financial aid because you have $100,000 in your 529 plan. So that's a very good question. There's a question here in the chat that says, how do the students apply for scholarships? Well, that's a very good question because it can be overwhelming how many sources are out there and how do you find them? So a couple things. One, when you apply to a private university, oftentimes the application for admission also automatically puts you into the pool for financial scholarships. So they make it easier for you. When you apply to a public school in California, the FAFSA is your application, and they share it with the California state government called the California Aid Commission, and you get considered for grants there. And then there's a variety of different third-party websites that work as portals where you go to the website, you open up an account, you set up a profile for your student, and the system will go out there and research all available scholarships that fit certain criteria. So if you are, for instance, and this is a real scholarship, if you had to leave school after 2 years because you were sick, and then you went back to school and you're a single woman of color, or let's say, to be specific, let's say a Latina at 25 years old, and you decide you want to go back and get your degree in nursing, there could be a scholarship just for that. So these portals try to match up scholarships that are being granted by people all over this country with applicants. And so that's another tool. You apply at the school, you apply with the state, with the FAFSA, and then you also can apply through third-party applicants. Ideally, you should never have to pay anyone at all a fee to try to get a scholarship. If that happens, call me, because that could be a scam. You shouldn't have to pay for it.
I also want to add that we have our College and Career Center, or we have 2 of our college and career counselors that are more than happy to support our students, and they keep their website updated. They're at Pittsburgh High School, so there's always a lot of local scholarships that they continually are updating, and it has the deadline. And so if you do have a student, once they reach their 12th grade, please have them work with the college and career counselors and have them constantly apply for scholarships, and they're always posted there along with the deadlines.
Yeah, no, and thank you for reiterating that, because some of the questions that are in the chat have to do with students trying to take college courses while they're still in high school and what credits they get. Again, the resources that your high school will definitely be able to help you and make sure you navigate so that your students get credit for that, because that does give you a nice kickstart. And besides, another thing, that's a pretty assertive student that was willing to take local high school classes as well, finish high school while already starting school. There are websites. Someone's asking, what are these websites? I will work with Leticia to put together a list of resources that she could send out to all of you that joined this call tonight. I will also be providing my contact information if you so choose that you would want to have a one-on-one complimentary consultation to talk about your own situation and your own journey to plan for college expenses. We can do that as well. I'm just kind of scanning through the chat. Leticia, are there any other questions that you see that I can address in the next 30 seconds or minute that we have together?
There's a question as far as 529 plans. If can they be transferred to another child within their family if the child it was set up for did not use it?
Not always. It has to do, it depends on the rules of the 529 plan, which is always in the disclosure when you're looking at the account. So all the accounts are different. And so you just always have to make sure you read the fine print before you sign up for an account and make sure that you do have that kind of flexibility. Some of them you can't transfer to another family member. That's a good question.
There is a question in the Q&A. If all college funds are coming from the parent, am I still forced to file the FAFSA?
I don't know if forced is a good word. I think it's a good idea to do it, unless you have a compelling reason that you do not want to provide income tax IRS information, because it cannot hurt you at all if you submit it. But if you are going to school cash only, then I don't see why you would apply if you don't expect to receive any funds from anyone else at all.
There's a question of can we apply for scholarships if you're in 11th grade?
Yes, absolutely. You may not get considered for scholarships that are available at the university when you submit your admission. So when you submit your application for admission and they automatically consider you for scholarships because you're not there yet. But if you're a junior, there's all kinds of local community scholarships you can apply for. And then if you get, if you win that scholarship or that award, they'll hold it in escrow for you until you leave for college. And then they can send it directly to pay your college funding office.
What about scholarships once students already are in college? Are there additional scholarships they can apply for?
Yeah, there are. Now, in my experience, and I can't say this 100%, but with private schools, when you receive your scholarship package as an incoming freshman, as long as you maintain the academic requirements and, you know, probably code of conduct as well, they usually, the offer will state it at the beginning, but chances are very good that that offer will be the same for your entire career at that school. So you don't have to worry about reapplying for it. If you are, let's say, a junior at the UC, like my daughter was, well, her GPA bumped up to above a 3.5 at one point, and she's like, well, I'm going to apply for additional scholarships. So even the public schools have a long list of scholarships that are always available that you can apply for. And you're not limited to what the universities and colleges offer. Again, these third-party portals will actually provide a lot of information about other scholarships that are available. Employers offer scholarships, major companies, Walmart, Clorox, Safeway offer scholarships, community services and nonprofits. I mean, that's why I said it was overwhelming, because you almost have to come up with a strategy to systematically search for scholarships. But you hear stories of kids who got their entire college education funded through scholarships. They didn't get it easily. They worked hard all summer long, every day, looking for and applying to scholarships, but it pays off. Any other questions? Okay.
There's some questions as far as what's it says a UTMA account.
Oh, an UTMA account, that's a custodial account. That's a account that is for a person that's under 18 years old, but legally it has to have a guardian, whether it's a parent or a legal guardian or a grandparent. But usually that refers to accounts that are in the name of a minor, a child, but has to have a guardian, an adult guardian. And so an UTMA, an UTMA account could be a savings account down at Wells Fargo. It could be a CD account owned by a child in a child's name that's owned down at the bank. It's the structure of the account. Who has the legal rights to make decisions, and that's the guardian. Good question.
While we finish up the Q&A, I did post an exit survey link. If you could please take a moment to fill out. It's just a few questions. The link is there in the chat. And
Yeah.
let's see if there's any, there's a question. How much do I need to save for my 3- and 7-year-old scholars that want to be scientists?
Well, my first answer is that is awesome that they want to be scientists, because especially if, this sounds bad, but especially if they're girls, we need more women scientists in this world. And I say that as a father of 2 daughters and 2 sons. That question you're the only one who can really answer that question. And I'll say because it has to do with doing an analysis of your own cash position. It has to do with how much, because you're asking how much to save. Well, how much you can save has to do with how much you can earn and what your cash flow is and what your financial situation looks like. It also has to do with what your career outlook looks like and how much you think your income will grow over time. And the way we normally answer that question is by creating an educational financial plan that takes all those variables into place, and we put projections together, running scenarios that says, okay, if we save this much with this inflation and this is my income level, where would I be in 10 years or in 12 years? And what are the other situations I have? Do I have rent? Do I have a mortgage? Do I have a balloon payment, or do I already own my house? So all of those things come into play when you start saving for college. And it can be answered, but it really is a one-on-one type solution. It can't just be a blanket statement to a group, to everyone, because everyone's different.
Gary, there was a question, you might have already answered it. It says, what do you think of app programs like College Backer or UNest?
Oh, I saw that. I didn't answer that yet. Well, I'm not familiar with either one of those programs, so I'm not sure if they are programs that help you. See, there's programs out there that help you find scholarships, and they give you these guarantees where I'm going to pay you $4,000 and you're going to find me scholarships that are worth at least $20,000. So therefore, I saved money because I paid you $4,000. If these companies that UNest are like that, I'm not fond of those, because you can do a lot of this work on your own when it comes to scholarship research. Some people are just, for lack of a better word, they're just not engaged enough to do it. Now, there are services where you're just getting information, where you are seeking out scholarships. But I have colleagues and friends who have paid fees through some of these services to help a counselor coach their child on how to interview and apply, have the counselor go out and find the scholarships and help them write their essays. I mean, those are all things that you can do, but they cost at a cost. And so it just really depends on who you are, how much you want to spend, and what your perspective is on it. I personally have 4 kids on their way to college, and I don't pay for any of those services. I make them work on it a little bit, and I work on it a lot. I think kids need to know that it doesn't come easy, and that they have to, have some skin in the game to have to be engaged in that process. So I'm not familiar with those 2 services. I'll look them up, but if they're asking for money up front, I would definitely look at the fine print. Good questions. I don't mind staying on a little longer if there's more questions. I just don't want to keep anyone away from their families.
All right, I did put the link to the exit survey back in the chat. If you could take a moment to fill that out. I want to thank Mr. Gary Varan for this wonderful presentation. And thank you to each of you for attending this evening and taking time out of your evening to hear the information, to start planning ahead for the future of your child or your children. So thank you so much for joining us. And please join us. We have a couple more, 3 more sessions. We have 1 more session with Mr. Varan. We'll repeat this session, I believe October 7th. And then we have 2 sessions with Dr. Roxanne Ocampo. She's a national college admissions expert and published author. And she'll be doing 1 presentation for our high school students and their families. I'm talking about how to write those college essays when you're applying for college. how to make yourself stand out, right? How to fill out those, not only fill out the essays, but make yourself stand out in the application process so you can get into those top colleges along with your community service and your GPA. She'll also be doing another presentation on district-wide for all of our parents across our district, how we can prepare our children at all levels, whether your child's in elementary school and junior high or in high school, what we as parents and guardians can do to help support our children to make sure when that time comes that they're more than ready and prepared to get into top universities of their choice. So thank you again for joining us this evening. Please check your Parent Square accounts. If you haven't yet activated your Parent Square account, that's our new communication system. Please contact any of your parent and family liaisons or log into your Aries parent portal and click on the communications tab, and that'll prompt you to activate your Parent Square account. So thank you again for joining us this evening. Thank you to Ms. Maria Gomez for doing our translation, and most sincere thank you to Mr. Gary Varan for taking time out of his evening as well to give us this valuable information. Thank you to everyone and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.